with our customers and our clients. But first, just a quick introduction about 7 Peaks and Morphosis. So we've been around for quite some time now, 7 Peaks since 2014, Morphosis a little bit longer than that. Recently, this year, we all came together to be one big happy family. So Morphosis and 7 Peaks are now together, obviously from lots of branding and everything you see here. Morphosis coming from a design background, 7 Peaks coming from the engineering background. Together, we're able to essentially touch on all stages of product lifecycle. 7 Peaks Morphosis now, we're over 200 people, 25 different nationalities, so very diverse, and really being able to cover a lot of different skills and offer our clients really an end-to-end type solution. What do we do? All right, so we do a lot of different things. It's from research, design, development, to growth marketing, product analytics, et cetera, et cetera. But tonight, what we're going to be talking about is discovery, right? And discovery really is, I guess, kind of the first step in our journey with our clients, with our partners, to really be able to build digital products that deliver business impact. And that's really the key theme of what we want to talk about tonight. This evening's agenda, so Yosan will be joining us in a second to have a little chat about what is discovery and kind of introduce some of the problems first. Then we'll lead into a panel discussion with Roy, CTO of 7 Peaks, Jeremy, CEO of Morphosis, and myself, head of business development, so I'll be on the business side. The three of us will be kind of looking at the 3 areas of what products are, right? Engineering, design, and of course business, and what that balance really means to us. So, without further delay, let's get started. Everybody standing in the back, feel free to pull up a seat, stay for a little while. We should have a good little chat. So I'll hand it over to Jostein now. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. Great to see all of you here. It's good to see we have a recurring crowd that comes for the free pizza and beer, and not looking at anyone specifically. I think before we start, I just want to mention we have a specific charity here, Karma Family, that we've been supporting for the last 11 years. It's a non-profit organization helping children, mostly towards the border, towards Burma, so basically stateless children. So if anybody's interested and looking for something charitable to donate to or contribute to for the holiday season, please go have a look and you come talk to me as well and to the team. So, as Chris mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit today about discovery and our interpretation of discovery. So it's today is a talk with 7 Peaks people about how we look at it from our side, and I hope also everybody would help come with questions and potentially challenge anything that you might be disagreeing with. So there is a Slido QR code here for difficult questions, and there will be a microphone afterwards for whoever want to ask some questions afterwards. So if you look at software projects, right, building software is not easy. This is some of the stats from Standish Group from 2020, basically showing a little bit of kind of difference between Agile and the Waterfall project and some of the success rates here, right? So again, you can probably dispute some of these numbers, but again, you can see here at least that a lot of projects here is either challenged or failed. So you can see here more than 50% of all software projects literally are failing, right? And less than 2.5% of companies complete their project 100% successfully. If you look at again Agile versus Waterfall, basically the larger you go, the harder you fall. So again, that's the same for both Agile as well as Waterfall. Again, same report from Standish Group. And again, the smaller you have the project, the higher chance of actually succeeding these projects, right? So again, IT project with a budget of $1 million is 50% more likely to fail than one with below $350,000, according to Gartner. So why is this so, right? For everybody here that has been working with software, it's very difficult to be able to really align between, say, customer, partner, vendor on what to build and what is a swing, right? As in, is a swing the one nice recliner sofa hanging in a tree? Is that what you really need, or is that really what you want? Versus the tire down in the corner there, right? So there's a lot of, I would say, misunderstanding, misinterpretation, different ways of interpreting different requirements that result in basically the end product to be very different than maybe the customer envisioned initially, right? And that is something that makes it very complicated to actually build software, because every single requirement can be misinterpreted one way or the other, which means that there could be a lot of these kind of different permutations of how things end out in the end. Another thing is, once you start also building software, right, there is always this, I want this to be changed, I want to have another feature, let's do something else and change this color to green, whatever it is, right? So again, depending again on the commercial models, these things are, again, for waterfall fixed price projects, typically a change request. It takes a lot of kind of rigid process to be able to manage this efficiently and ensure that you are not kind of basically burning your budget. If you're running this on an agile model, the more of these change requests that are coming in, the more money you earn, but the less chance of you actually hitting those delivery milestones, which is just as important. And again, no clear definition of scope again, right? So again, what is actually definition of done? When are you actually finished with a specific feature, etc. So basically, reducing risk in delivery by basically providing incremental value. So for us, we've been doing waterfall projects. We've been doing, I think the longest waterfall project we did was around 1.5 years. We spent 1 month up front doing basically some sort of a planning phase, and then basically executed a fixed price project over 1.5 years. Of course, overrunning a lot of different communication back and forth with the customer, change requests, and really trying to really manage that project, right? And then, of course, you have a more agile approach, right? So here you can see here, starting typically with a discovery, where we then help and actually scope the project and really understand what the customer needs, and based on that, scope down the project. So basically reduce the size of the project. So instead of having a 18 months project, we now try to reduce this to a 3 to 6 months project, and then try to really understand what the customer needs, and then basically define and basically design the solution for that, and then do milestone-based delivery. So again, there's always pros and cons from waterfall and agile delivery. But again, based on the stats in the beginning, I think it speaks for itself. I think the smaller you can scope the project, the less risk for both customer and basically the vendor, and the higher chance of actually delivering some actual business value. So how do we at 7 solve some of these problems, and how do we look at it? So we have this nice futuristic picture here with the digital product discovery. So the way we look at it here is that we look at it as 3 parts, right? So a great product have 3 parts to it, right? One, you need to have a viable, basically IP, right? You need to have something that is providing some business value. You are solving some specific business goals. You are delivering some sort of value for the business. Basically, the customer can actually monetize this or reduce cost or provide some sort of value. From the UX side or desirability, you are actually solving a problem for a user, right? You are actually helping to improve either their process, their workflows, or provide a better user experience for the end customer. And by that, having people to actually enjoy using your products. And then again, feasible, right? Again, you have something now that is looking pretty. It's something that maybe may give you some business value, but it also needs to be actually technically feasible. So you need to make sure that you're building something that makes sense, and also in a cost-efficient way, ensuring that you can actually ship this product and get that out to your end customers. So I think that's just frame the discussion we're going to continue having now. So now we're going to have a panel discussion and discuss a little bit more on these topics, basically on digital product discovery, and so some of the ways we look at it and how we think we can help them build better products. So yeah, let me invite Jeremy here. First, our Chief Design Officer at 7 Peaks and CEO of Morphosis. And Roy Ivanhoe, CTO and co-founder at 7 Peaks. Christopher, I think, Head of Business Development. All right. So, where do we start? So, okay, so as mentioned here, we've been looking at 3 parts to basically discover, right? So again, Chris here, every day talking to clients, looking at how do we actually work with the clients, how do we actually close these deals, right? How do we do a proposal, how do we actually build a proposal that makes sense? Roy here is the last line of defense. He's now sitting making sure that we don't do any stupid things and make sure that before we commit to any sort of project, we are actually capable of actually delivering this in the best possible way. And then, of course, Jeremy here is making sure that actually from a design perspective, it's all working seamlessly and nicely. Right? So I think maybe starting first on with Chris here, what is some of the challenges you see now when we are talking to clients and they want to build an app? So clients typically is, I want to have an app, what does it cost?
Yeah, so it's always very vague, right? I think oftentimes when people contact us, right, they have an idea, but the specifics or the details of that idea are not necessarily fleshed out, right, all the way, right? I want to build an app that does this, right? But really, how does it work, right? Or what is it supposed to do? Or more importantly, what's the business value, right? And I think that's really the most important thing. And because of this vagueness, right, we oftentimes have to try and find a way to reduce the vagueness, right? Reduce the assumptions, reduce the bias, and through that, right, we use discovery. Discovery is a tool, right? And it's, like I mentioned before, it's literally the first step to being able to build the right product, right, that solves your business problems, that does what your users need, and then, of course, how do we facilitate that through engineering? With us, clients come in different shapes and sizes too, right? So we service enterprise clients. They typically will have this lovely 3-letter acronym called an RFP, which has its own challenges at times, right? Which is a request for a proposal, right? Which is typically, here's a wish list, here's everything that we want, right? Please let us know how much it costs and how long it takes. Very challenging, right? From a business development perspective. Selling that is hard. Selling into that is even harder, right? It takes a lot of investment from our side, a lot of questions, a lot of things that go unanswered, and then to be able to commit to them over a long time is also quite challenging. Risk, right? We talk about risk, and that's really what that topic introduces. Other clients, right? We can then work towards, hey, let's use discovery as a tool, right? And let's figure this out together. What are kind of, I guess, from a sales perspective, right? We preach discovery because it solves a lot of the problems for not just us, but also the client. And by doing so, right, we set that project up for success, right? It makes it a lot easier. And if we succeed, the client succeeds. If the client succeeds, we succeed, right? So that's where that union is from. We talk about RFPs. I think it can be oftentimes a one-sided kind of deal, and that's not that.
Perfect. Roy, from a technical side, what's your thoughts on and love for RFPs?
I'm not sure if it's specifically from the technical side, but I think in our experience, the problem usually starts with the traditional procurement process. I think a lot of so these RFPs are coming from procurement where they might not have that much experience to procure actually software projects. So it has a very traditional format where it's basically a one-off delivery, maybe 1 year, 2 years of effort, and then warranty. So it's treating a software project as almost like a hardware delivery where you buy something, you get it delivered, and then you want to have a warranty on that. In our experience, so RFP is often basically it's a wish list. So you have a lot of features that have often been congregated by running around, talking to different departments in your company, and they all list out the features that they want. It's also based on a lot of assumptions, and there's like a hope of an expected result. And I think it's very clear that it's focused on output and not on outcome. And I think this is where we in 7 Peaks say that we want to build what the customer needs and not what they want. So what it means is we want to turn everything around, and instead of looking at the output, we want to start with the outcome. So what do you actually want to achieve? And that means going concrete into what pain points are we going to solve for which users, what value are we going to bring for which users. And I think this is where discovery comes in. It's like twisting everything around from a wish list, bullet points, 1 to 2 years of software development into trying to look at what do we want to achieve.
Jeremy, from your side, more from the value proposition, problem statement side, what do you think?
When we get some clients coming to us, so we always start with the design. So I'm always at the forefront every time of a new project. And when people come to us, they're like very biased. They think they know exactly what they want. They think they know who are their audience, but actually they're just making a lot of assumptions. That's why discovery is like so important, because by doing some research, by doing design thinking or value proposition design, we can try to help them identify a bit more exactly what's their problem. Without the right problem to work on, we're going to create the wrong solution. The problem is that very often the way they define the problem statement is always wrong. So an example I give very often that's very simple is that if you're sick, you go to the doctor. Doctor is going to say, oh yeah, you're sick, you've got a cold, you've got to get some medicine. But actually, that might not be the problem. Maybe the problem is actually deeper. Deeper in the sense that maybe that person is not feeling okay, maybe a bit depressed for different reasons. And so giving medicine is not going to fix that problem. It's the same for business. Business, you need to be able to clearly define that problem statement. And unless you talk to users, get to understand exactly who they are and what they want, not in terms of demographics, because that's the wrong way to look at it in a persona, but in the way, like, what type of task do they need to do, and what can be the gain and the pain relievers for these people. Then you can find out what can be the right product to fulfill that need and behavior of users. And then you can start to refine the problem statement, and then start to work on some solutions through design thinking to iterate, collaborate with the client, define different directions, and try to see which one can be the best. Then you test it, you validate it, and once you've got a validation for this, then you know you're going in the right direction. But clients, they come to us with a list of requirements, like this guy said, and they just expect us to just create it. But if we just create it, just execute, there's very little value we can bring to their business. Like you saw the stats from Stein, a lot of companies are actually failing because, again, they work on the wrong statements, they don't understand their users, they think their solution is just going to work straight away. By doing a discovery, we can try to validate this earlier, make sure at least we go in a better direction. It's not always, we cannot always say 100% this is going to work, okay? We'll still need to test it, execute sometimes, but then we can try to look at the data and try to correct this and try to refine the direction over time, okay? So discovery is not just something we do at the beginning of the project. You need to be continuous as well. We need to keep doing it over time, try to learn more about users, about the business, and refine the direction as we're going as well.
All right, perfect. So I think another part of kind of the discovery is also the scoping part, right? One of the biggest problems with the big RFP is that it's very vague, of course. There's a lot of questions going through it. But the other thing is that it's also trying to solve everything that you can come up with from every different department, right? So you have your wish list from your finance team, your marketing team, your sales team, etc. So I think also one of the other, I would say, interesting things that we are trying to cover during discovery is also, I would say, scoping and really making sure that we are focusing on the right things, right? And it's also how we would typically would be scoping a project based on user roles, based on different type of users using the platform.
Yeah, I can take that. I think, at the end of the day, right, when we talk about users, right, that's who we're building it for, right? Products are a channel that solve a business objective, but at the end of the day, who's using it, right? That's what matters most. We need to make sure that they're enjoying it, right? We're activating them, we're engaging them, and retaining them, I think, over the long term. If we talk about how do we understand who these users are, right, I think that comes down to, well, having the opportunity to listen to them. Right? I think, through research, through just simply going out, you do something as simple as a survey, right? Listen to your customers, right? Understand their voice, right? If you're a large organization, you have the resources to be able to go out, to be able to understand this. And if you haven't yet, probably go out and try it, right? Because I think the better you understand your users, the more likely you are to build products, right, and offer the things that they really want. And I think that's really at the core of it. So I guess to your question, right, how do you understand users? Talk to them, right? take the opportunity, talk to them, because that will set you up for really what do we need to do as a business to be able to make them happy. If they're happy, happy customers mean happy business. I think at the end of it.
I guess also, if I understand you correctly, and I think you were talking about also the fact that in RFP you're like grouping together a lot of features that have very different impact for the company and also different efforts. So I think the way when we try to change the client from a big project, one-time release, major release, 1-year development, into more a product mindset is to reduce the time to market and make sure that we can deliver some value as quickly as possible. And this is about continuously working with the client in grooming and prioritizing and making sure that we only do releases, only do features that are tied to specific objectives, that we know the value that we are bringing. And I think that's a problem with the traditional RFP, is like you're just grouping everything together.
Yeah, exactly. So I think by focusing on basically business objectives and specific user groups, it allows us also to scope things much smaller and deliver value much quicker. So one example again is that we have customers now that want to optimize their transaction cost, but they don't have any transaction on the platform. Still want to do native integration with multiple banks instead of doing one payment gateway because it's more expensive. Right? So there's a lot of these kind of discussions and questions that are coming up during those discoveries where we can help them solve and ensure we are actually doing this the best possible way. Sorry, sheet list here.
I think just from the technical side, I think that's a good example. So in terms of solution architecture, what we see is that the end goal for many customers is to have direct integration with the banks to reduce the transaction fees, and also because sometimes there's a business, they have a business agreement, something like that. But in terms of getting to market quickly, that's not necessarily where we want to start. So before you have any transactions, you don't need to think about how you optimize it. Right, so what we would typically, this is a good example of product mindset, is maybe we will go to market with a payment gateway, which allows us to give a lot of opportunities to the end user, to how to pay. And then over time, when it makes sense, we will start to look into direct integration with banks. But I think that's a typical example of, if you have an RFP, you might have to do all that work upfront from the start.
And I think the way we try to position things now is that we have either it's revenue generating services, like an e-commerce, it's a shop, you're selling something, you're generating revenue, and we're helping you generate that revenue. Or it's cost saving, cost optimization initiatives, right? So that means again you are kind of streamlining your processes, you are reducing your cost, you're optimizing your transaction cost, you are etc. Right? And it's very difficult to do both at the same time. So again, for us, back to what's your objective? Is your objective now to optimize your cost for your operational team, your sales team, your marketing team? Or is your business objective now to actually sell that first shoe online through your online shop, right? Because before you sell that first transaction online, you don't need to optimize anything. Everything behind the scenes can be offline, right? If you have one transaction a week, you can do it offline. One a day, you can do it offline. One an hour, you can probably do it offline. Right? So you don't need to build the whole system before you launch, right? So it's back to, again, really understanding what's the problem you're trying to solve, how do you scope it, and even if you launch your e-commerce platform within 3 months, in month 4, maybe you could optimize some of the other things before you manage to sell enough to actually meet that, right? So,
and actually, I would also say, the flip side of the same coin is when the time is right and you want to optimize your operations in the back office, then you need to treat those users as first-class, citizens. You need to take. Now we're going to provide value to this type of user. Now we really need to understand this user, what do they need, and how can we make the process efficient, not as like a side thought or something. Oh yeah, we need to have a back office. You see it a lot in the RFP, like they forgot the whole back office.
So I think once you now kind of, I would say, we start building the software, we start getting some, I would say, design the software, we now know what we're building. We made maybe some assumptions based on design, research, user testing, etc. How do we now tie that all together in a whole nice product life cycle? How do you now validate those assumptions you made from design or?
I'm not sure if I understand the question.
You don't understand my question. No. So, different. We haven't rehearsed well enough there internally. So basically, when you during the discovery, right? So we do user research, we talk to the users, we make some applicable prototypes, we do user testing, we get feedback. We now validate our assumption of how the users react to this product, right? Now you build it, you launch it. How does now UX come in?
Yeah, okay, I understand what you mean. So, obviously, like, once you launch something, like, that's not the end of it. There's a problem, like, very often with, like, waterfall, is that Microsoft did that mistake for, like, a very long time. They spent, like, 2 or 3 years to launch Windows, and it works or it doesn't work. And we all know the stories, like, 95 worked very well, 98 was a disaster, and so on. The problem is that you spend 2 or 3 years to spend so much time developing something, just hoping it's going to work, because there's no validation along the way. And when you release, if it doesn't work and you spend like 2 or 3 years like Microsoft, that's a lot of money that you spend over time. By having continuous development, you can start to first prioritize, as we discussed just now, try to refocus on the business, what's the most important for the business right now, and just start to build this one, the core system. That's why it's called like MVP, minimal viable product, right? It's the one that can start to make money for the company before you start spending too much. So you test before, you do a lot of research, you may test some concepts before with users, make sure you go in the right direction. Then after it's all the execution. You're not yet sure if it's going to work or not. Then you launch something. That's why it's very important to build just a small portion of that business first, that product. You test it some more. You can do some user testing sessions. You can talk to users. You can do some focus groups. You can do some more user interviews. But of course, you can also try the data. There's a lot of tools like Hotjar, UXCam. You can start to analyze all the data and see if people actually go through that funnel that you created for them. If that doesn't work, then you can try to analyze it through more user research, or try to just look at the data and try to come up with some fixes for that first. It's very important to work on your core first. If your core is not working, whatever you're going to build on top of it, if you keep adding features, if that core is very weak, it's going to collapse eventually. It's never going to work. And then the cost of rebuilding something from scratch to try to fix everything later is going to be very costly. So it's very important for companies to understand, first test your minimal viable product, what you really need to start a business. Like Jostein said, you don't need to build everything at the beginning. There's a lot of things that can be manual. I talked to that company just last week actually. These guys, they've got no great idea. Factory and no users. Users want to build something and just sell the product on Lazada or some other places. And they want to build a marketplace where they can connect users, consumers, directly to the factories to be able to build their stuff and then sell it directly to users later. Great concept. But the cost of building a platform that big would take first so long, so much money, plus marketing to try to get people on board, that they will never work. They already have contacts with the factories, already have contacts with the artists to be able to also design these products. So all they need right now is just a simple system to create basically an inventory for these users. And that's all they need. They don't need to do anything else. They don't need to connect to the end consumer yet. They can do it later. They can just go directly to consumers and talk about their business. They have that inventory for themselves. They can connect to people directly, get the job done. That's it. The job is done already. But if that core is wrong, if you keep building on top of it, you're not going to fix that core system at the beginning. And so the cost of this is even 10 times worse. Because you spend so much time to invest in building a big platform, you did a lot of marketing, and then it's not working, and now you spend 2 or 3 years to try to fix it. Your business is going to fail. There's no way you can keep doing it for 5, 10 years to try to fix the business. You need to have a result in 6 months or 1 year already. And that's what Agile does.
But I think this is a good example of kind of different users, right? You have yours, as you mentioned, the artist, you have the factory, you have potentially sellers. So as any marketplace, you need to have buyers and sellers before you can actually launch the marketplace, right? So again, a good example here, can you solve one of these problems for one of these users first, launch that, start then building that kind of one side of the marketplace, and then afterwards look into the next one, right? So it's more about, again, challenging the overall idea, understanding what you're trying to do, can it be broken down, is there any specific things that can be done in a sequence, or does everything need to be done in the same same time, right? Yeah. All right. So I think, of course, one of the challenges, of course, by I would say promoting agile is of course the other problem is, okay, now I give you $1 million a month. What do I get after 3 months, 6 months, 12 months? What do I get? Chris, what do I get? Don't commit to it.
Great question. I think what's at the root of all this? Trust, right? I think that's the biggest thing. You know, let's talk about the models first, right? If we talk about agile versus waterfall, right? Waterfall, very safe for the client. I pay for what I get, right? I know what I'm going to get at the end of the day, right? But it's also constant, right? Things change. Oh, change request. Oh, this changes the whole entire solution, right? Oh, delays, right? That's a challenge, right? But client likes it. I know what I'm paying for. I know what I get. Oh, but I'm probably going to pay for a little bit later, right? If we talk about agile, right? To Yoshin's comment of, hey, what do I get every month? Right? What am I paying for? Right? Well, I think you get a couple different things. I think first and foremost, right? In my mention of trust, right? It's about building the product that's right for the business, right? And that's what we keep harping about the business, because the business is the foundation, right? Business, we have to be able to serve the business no matter what we build. When we talk about what do I get at the end of the month, well, what you get is what you prioritize, right? And that's what we do in discovery, right? We sit down with the client. We want to be able to understand what's most important to you, because that's what we're going to do first, right? So if you ask me, what do I get every single month for $1 million? Well, you're going to get what you prioritize. What do you want most, right? And that's what we're going to build first, and that's what we're going to release first, because that's what's going to bring the most value to you and your business, right? Because of all the different steps that we've taken to make sure that that's validated, and also to make sure that from your own mouth that that's what's most important to you, right? Everybody here, what do you want most importantly, right? You probably want that first, right? Whatever that is at your core. So if you ask, what do I get at the end of every month for 1 million baht? You get what you want the most, right? And that's your priorities. And there's a sequence to then what are we able to deliver, right? But my first comment of trust, well, it has to work both ways, right? Because the risk is on both sides, right? It's on the client, of course. What do I get, right? They ask the question, but it's also on our side, right? We need to be able to deliver that, and then that's essentially what we as a business are trying to be able to do, and make sure that those fears or those concerns are minimized as much as possible. That's what discovery does.
Yeah, perfect. Roy, you had any thoughts on the topic?
No, I guess, just from the technical side, I think it's important with continuous delivery. So I think we are working with the client continuously to groom and prioritize and make sure that we have a clear direction and a vision of what we're going to do, what we're going to release, in terms of what value are we going to bring to which user. I think it's just important to make sure that we challenge the client and ourselves all the time to make sure that we can bring value iteratively and make sure that everything we release is tied to an objective. So no nice to haves, which is again back to the mixing everything together in an RFP. I think nice to have is what's the expression, enemy of any progress. No.
Yeah. No, because yes. So I think one of the challenges, of course, with agile is that it is a risk in one way for the customer. For waterfall, it is a risk in one way for the vendor or partner, right? But I think starting off with a waterfall project, one of the biggest challenges we have, or things that we don't like that well, is that again you feel like you're starting a project by setting up a fence on day one. Your project manager comes in with a big sign saying, no, set up a fence, this is the scope, don't ask for anything else. Right? Versus you start an agile project, you go in and say, hey, how can I help you? Right? It's a very different way of working. And again, in a waterfall project, it's a pure vendor client relationship, but in a more agile, it's a much more partner and trust-based relationship. And I think that's very important, because if we now do a fixed price project for 12 months, we have secured that revenue for the next 12 months. We can add whatever random margins we want. We can kind of inflate this as much as we want. But at the end of the day, we can still overrun that budget And at the end of the day, there's most likely going to be one happy party. Either the vendor had a very good margin and they walk away happy, or the customer is very happy because they managed to squeeze them. But that working relationship most likely will end at that time, and you will go out and find your next client. Sadly. It's not always the case, but it's a bit more the extreme, but that's one of the risks you have by doing this, especially, again, working with procurement for bigger enterprises where they are enforcing penalties, you are being squeezed, you are, etc. So again, it is one of the challenges that for us, we really value long-term partnerships, and we want to work with our clients and help them succeed building great digital products, right? So again, when we do an agile product team, we are proving ourselves every single month. If we are not proving ourselves, the client will terminate, they have a 1-2 months notice, they walk away, right? So again, it's kind of, in many ways, it's a win-win for both parties. But again, as Chris said, it's really based on trust as well. Yeah. All right.
I think also, like, just, we've been through this whole journey, so when we started 8 years ago, we already from the beginning we tried to push agile, it was impossible. So then eventually we basically were forced into doing fixed price projects, which can be very complicated as well. Then eventually we managed to get a foothold for discovery, which we're talking about now. And then eventually we got into basically getting the golden ticket, full agile, and it's kind of like with great power comes great responsibility. So it's kind of, we learned that we have to run things in a very tight way. You came all the way from the fixed price, fixed scope project, all the way over to agile, and now it's kind of, we're taking it back into the middle somewhere. So I think, running a tight ship, making sure that we are continuously deploying, that we are bringing value, which is win-win. This is what makes us go for the long run with the client as well. But also, this is deviating a little bit from discovery, but it's also, we are wrapping the way we do agile in Scrum in some of the traditional project management methodologies that we all know. So we are doing tight budget control, we are doing monitoring, we are doing cadence with stakeholders, and I think it's also really, really important. It's not the end of the journey to achieve an agile contract. Like, this is where it starts, and now you need to prove yourself and build a relationship and work with this client over a long time.
Yeah, very good point. Jeremy, when a client now comes and think they have the greatest problem and the greatest solution, how does design thinking come in, and how do we now help and potentially poke holes in their dreams and find better solutions?
Design thinking is just a methodology, so we don't necessarily try to tell them they're right or wrong, but we go through a process to try to understand, their business objectives, to try to understand more their business as well, the industry, the competitors, try to get an idea of who they think are their personas. And we don't try to judge, we just ask questions only. Because the goal is just for us first to get alignment, try to extract from them as well. And then the more questions we ask, the more they realize actually, oh, maybe they don't know. Because when we ask some tough questions, when they say okay, my goal is acquisition or retention, whatever. But if they say, for example, it's just acquisition, okay, so how many people do you want to get? I don't know, 1,000. When? In 6 months from now. Okay, you don't have yet one product. We may need a few months to develop it. What's your marketing strategy? I don't know. So how are you going to acquire users? And the more questions you ask, the more they realize actually they don't know. Then we can turn it around and say, okay, so maybe we need to do more research. Maybe we need to get to know the users. Maybe you need to go talk to your marketing team. Maybe problem statement is that, what's your problem statement? Oh, I don't know, I think it's this one. And it's so generic, they could be used for almost anything. But again, I don't tell them they are wrong. We just through a questioning that they realize on their own, oh, actually they don't know what's my problem as well. What do users actually really want? What are their pain points? What can I refer to them that can solve that specific problems to them? And then the more questions you ask and combine with research, then you can start to redirect them, get them to see a better side of what the product could look like. And then it's so much easier discussion. Then they understand, although I'm not trying to just get their money, I'm just here to try to help them to make sure that the business is going to succeed. I'm not here to judge them, that's not the point. And through these exercises, then we slowly put them back in the right direction. Then afterwards, that's when we do the prioritization, that we can start to break it down, develop a bit more like the information architecture to try to see what that solution could look like, test it, validate it through design thinking. And then once we've got that direction, then after we can do the full the requirement document for them, for that MVP, to bring business value, to make sure like, they can at least keep moving forward with their business, start to make some money before they spend too much on it, basically.
Yeah, sure. Just to add something on that, I think, when we talk about the problems, right, also I think another opportunity that Discovery has is the people involved have a lot of different problems, right? So we're dealing with marketing, we're dealing with the sales team, we're dealing with operations, right? Discovery gives us an opportunity to get them all in one room and to align, right? Because people have different problems, departments have different problems, you have different KPIs, you have different OKRs, right? So through Discovery, right, yes, we're going through the product, we're asking questions, right, that's fundamental. But I think also at the same time, the more people that are in the room, right, from the different departments, through Discovery we can align them, right? And if they're aligned, there's a common vision, there's a common objective, there's a common problem that they're all trying to solve and that they can get around. If we don't do that in the beginning, it's going to be very challenging because the definition of success is inherently different to every single person, right? And I think that that's really one of the big things, especially like from day one, we have to try and be able to understand across all stakeholders, right? We understand that, okay, now we can start asking questions, now we can start digging deeper. But they need to be on the same page. We need to be on the same page altogether. Once we do that, it becomes much easier.
Perfect. So I think that asking questions, I think, is one of the things that we always are doing a lot, right? And trying to really understand the root cause, what's the problem, what's the challenge, right? But I think one of the problems in Thailand, I guess, is if you ask too many questions, it's kind of why do you want to know about my business? I know my business. Why are you challenging my business? So of course it is, especially in maybe in Thailand, it is different. But again, of course, we are being paid to consult you on building a better digital product. So of course we're gonna challenge you. And if you don't want to be challenged, go somewhere else because we will challenge you. So I think that's it's kind of, again, if you look at development these days, right? It's turning commodity. You can get cheap developers from anywhere you want. And from us, we are transitioning from a development design kind of agency to becoming more, I would say, digital transformation kind of drivers, helping basically customers now to build the next great thing, right? So we are in a place where we want to work as a partner and help and really consult the clients, right? So, but okay, I think let's move on to a few questions. If people haven't asked a question yet, please put in some more. And if anybody have any questions here in the room, anybody want to raise their hand and ask something? That's not shy. There's one not shy guy.
Hey, how you guys doing? So my question is, how do you know that you figured out your real problem and it's not an assumption? Let's say like I talk to them and I'm like, oh, I think your problem is this. How do I actually know I actually found the real problem?
From my side, at least a quick one is usually it's like, do we have a way of measuring if what we are doing is a success or not? I think if you cannot define what is the goal, like what is the success, how do we measure it? I think then usually it's a clear indication that we are maybe not asking the right questions, or we're dealing with something which is maybe not the right, we're maybe not on the right track, if that makes sense.
There's maybe, I don't know if you know in design thinking, there's a 5 whys. It's just a fancy exercise just to say like you should always try to rephrase your question in a different way every time. Try to see if you get a different answer. And so if you keep asking that why long enough, then you can get to the bottom of it. Okay, the example I said before, why are you sick? Yeah, I've got the flu. But if I keep asking why, like no long enough, you're going to tell me like no, the problems that you had, maybe you just divorced, I don't know, whatever happened to you, I don't know. But you know what I mean. And so at some point you know you're getting somewhere. Is that a revalidation? I don't know. But you know you're getting like no closer to the real problem sometimes. And it's just, sometimes it's just a matter to ask the right questions and to rephrase it in a different way, because clients again are buyers. That's something I was saying before, because they've been doing their business sometimes for like 3-5 years, and they really think that's their problem. And sometimes all they need is someone else's perspective to help them like, you know, receive it in a different way. So design thinking, I'm not giving them the answers very often. They are the one finding the answer for me. But I'm the one as moderator to ask questions until like, no, I feel like, okay, now I got to the bottom of it. Is that a validation? I don't know. But you know, you can at least get deeper and deeper like that.
Yeah, it's 100% right. And that is what you call the root question, right? Getting to the root question. You shouldn't look for answers before you actually know the root question. But I think the other part is also what you guys are doing, Jeremy, is how do we validate that it is actually a pain point? So what we do is talking to the actual user and not just reading the RFP.
Okay, so the way we do it is that once you find that problem statement, you start to do some design thinking. So that's where you have like the ideation, the chart. You have all seen the design thinking chart, and then you start to brainstorm in some different directions. And you can consider as any type of solutions as you want. Okay, there's no limitations to how much you can do. The only limitations is time and budget. Okay, but you can start to consider like no different solutions. Everyone vote for the one that they think like fit that business goals that we said at the beginning of design thinking workshops. Does that solve that problem statement? Yes or no? So you vote for that solution, the best solution that you think works. You prototype it. Prototyping, not everyone does it correctly as well. You don't need to design everything. You don't need to design the login screen. You design enough screens to be able to go test out with your users. Okay? And so sometimes you just need a few screens to be able to validate a business ID, okay? And you can test it through like not just a focus group, for example. You get a few people in the room, you explain what's your problem statement, you explain what's your solution, you explain how it's going to work, because there's a prototype, so you don't have like all the screens, but at least you design enough screens to be able to explain your concepts. You do a survey with them, try to understand like, if they feel like this could be like something that can solve their own problems. And if this is more positive, okay, you can start to develop it more, test it more, develop it more, and try to continue to test and validate along the way to make sure you're still going in the right direction. There's no guarantee you're going to get 100% validation at that stage. So there's no way you can get the validation there. But at least you reduce the risk of failure. That's the point of it of design thinking. If your validation is not positive at all, then you can try to test some other solutions. So you go back to the whiteboard, it's iterative, so you go back into ideation, or you go back into redefining your problem statement, maybe talking to users again, make sure maybe the research we've done put us in the wrong track. Let's look at it again in a different way. Let's try to redefine a problem statement and go through these stages again. But isn't it better than just trying to spend like 6 months to 1 year trying to develop something and just hope that one solution is going to work or not, which is waterfall, right? They come with a list of requirements, you just execute and just hope for the best. This way, you can spend like 2-3 months to just test like different directions, and when you feel confident, like, no, okay, that solution seems to work, let's explore it and let's develop it. At least you reduce the risk. Again, it's no validation, you're going to get that 100% validation.
That was a long answer. No more questions. Okay.
Thank you. Little bit introduction. I was talking to Jeremy earlier. My name is Professor Arun Ghosh. I come to Thailand for collaborative work at nanotech and biotech. If you know, that's in the science park. I work with nanotechnology at West Texas A&M University in Texas, USA. The research problem kind of related. I deal with computer science. My area is bioinformatics. I got training from University of California, Davis on that, and closely work with Professor Paul at computer science, and we teach the course together. So what we are finding, it's a major challenge, and I was thinking and putting that in front of you, the experts. The challenge is like writing a thesis or research paper. I think it's worldwide, everywhere. It's a major challenge, like, and the requirements is not changing. So far, I worked in India and also in USA, got my PhD over there. Writing the thesis, like few pages, you have different numbering system, and as you put the picture or the graph, it gets distorted, and every time you change, the indexing gets changed. Same thing about the research papers. They want like journals, now they want the camera ready, whatever they call. The conferences I presented, even in Thailand, they also want the camera ready. Not all the people are computer literate that much. So I think if we can develop a software that will help the researchers, the students for PhD or master students, they can utilize, they will definitely, they're desperate looking for that. One of my graduate students, Aubrey Howard, just finished her thesis, and we were facing a challenge, like every time Aubrey is putting the figure or changing the graph or something, the whole thesis is getting messed up. So if we can do something, that will be great. That's one proposal. The other one, I already gave my card and email address to Jeremy, so, or you can just type Dr. Nabarun Ghosh on Google search, you will find me. The next one is I work with the biomedical research and the various types of, applications. So they are like air purifiers, or the present one is extremely important. COVID, we thought it's gone, it's almost again coming back, so we have to wear the mask. And the major challenge for the mask, everybody understands, you feel suffocated after some time. You don't get enough air. So we developed a mask which is also marketed by Mahazak here in Thailand, all over the world. You get that from Air for Life. But sometimes the air control, if you have a software connected over there, you can have on your smartphone, you can increase the air, decrease the air, because that mask supplies the air from inside, right. And it has four.
Sorry, not to interrupt you.
Yeah,
but
sure.
How would you promise this?
Yeah, please go ahead.
It seems to be of course some interesting projects that you might have there, right? And again, the first approach would of course be to try to challenge some of these assumptions, and then of course look at how potentially that could be supported, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think that maybe offline, maybe better. Any other related to the presentation? Any questions? One comment?
Not 100% related, maybe, but you said not everybody is computer literate in these things. And I think it's interesting in the sense of what we're talking about now, as in most people are not natural product owners. That means we are not good at expressing what we need, right? And I think this is a very important part of what we're doing in Discover, is helping to refine the requirements, but also to like visualize what it will look like. This is what the end result will look like. Is this journey what you were looking for? Then we test it, then we make sure. So I think that's very important, and that's again back to the problems with the RFP, right? There is like, most people are not good at defining the problem, or we're not natural product owners, or we're not computer literate, or we don't know what's possible or not possible, right? And that's why we need to do discovery and work together with the actual users and try to help to come up with the best possible solution.
Great. Any other questions from the room? All right. So I'm not sure we're going to skip the first recurring question we have every year. It's French. So I know that it's important to do user research. How do we know that we already know enough about our user to make decisions or when to stop? Yes, Jeremy, maybe that's for you.
Oh, it's very hard to answer. The goal is to find, like, to understand like the task of users. Okay, what do they want to do exactly, and try to understand what could be the gains and pain points relievers for them. So research, I see that all the time from my UX researchers, is that we do some research and they're going to try to research everything. We're going to ask every single questions, everything. As we talked before, it's very important to set some goals. What will be the outcomes? What do we want from that project? Okay? And so the research should always be adapted to that specific goal. We don't need to know everything in the research. We just want to know that specific thing. Okay? So, I don't know, I don't have a project in mind, but you set that goal at the very beginning, and the research, they really need to be adapted to that. I'm not sure what to say because it's a very tough question to know exactly when to stop. I guess the point is that once you find that insight that you're looking for, you know you find it already. You know, okay, this is the direction. Of course, it's never like no finish, but at least you can start to like know structure what can be like the personas, try to understand like know what they want, what could be the task, and from that you can refine your product based on this one.
I guess the point here is also that it's not linear, like it's a loop. So we do some research, we think we have the answers, we deploy it as soon as we can. This again reducing the time to market instead of sitting in an office and assuming, and then we can do it again, So it's kind of, it doesn't really stop per se. It's a loop.
And then that's kind of the validated learning loop, right? So basically putting in data analytics, measuring everything, and then basically validating the assumptions we did during the design phase.
Yeah, I think just commercially speaking, right, research is also expensive. It's not free, right? And then there's a time, there's a cost, that comes along with that, right? So I think, what we've been trying to do a lot of is, like Roy mentioned, like Jeremy mentioned, is research is, we'll get to a point where, okay, let's proceed, right? We don't want, analysis paralysis or anything like that, right? But commercially speaking, right, because it's expensive, we are also trying to find ways to still incorporate elements of research in every design sprint, right? In everything that we do, in every release, right? Through automated user testing, right? There's solutions out there, things like this, right? It's becoming a lot easier to get the answers that you need, right? Across the entire product development process. And it's getting a lot cheaper and a lot more, or a lot less, effort intensive, right? To be able to incorporate those things, right? So there's definitely solutions out there, there's definitely alternatives out there, but is it ever enough? I don't know, probably not, right? Because it's continuous, right? They're organic.
At the beginning, you do a big discovery, as we explained at the beginning. So obviously, you define what should be the outcome, what the business goals, and then you start to define that research around this one. Then you start to test, validate, and then this becomes your first MVP. Okay, once you prioritize, okay, that should be the direction. You go in that direction, but every time you start to go to the next phases, you start to have new features. You need to restart this flow again, the discovery. The discovery phase doesn't need to be not take as long. The first one might take 1, 2 months, 3 months, depending on the size of the project. But later, when you look into not just sections of new features in the platform, you can only do the discovery, or you don't need to do a full one. It's a smaller design thinking workshop, basically.
All right. So we have another question here. I'm not sure if I understand it correct, but if client's direction might wrong, what should we do? So, anybody want to clarify the question a little bit more? As in, it doesn't mean if the client has, they want to build the wrong thing, or if the project is not running smoothly, or is it a challenge?
It's a delicate topic, but I think this is about challenging. I think using frameworks as 5 whys, or making sure that whatever the client asks for can be tied to an objective that we can measure it. Because if you ask the client what objective is it tied to, is it acquiring new users, is it revenue, is it retention? Okay, maybe they can answer this because it's oh yeah, revenue, we're going to make more money. But then you can ask, how are we going to measure this, how do we measure it? There are different techniques and frameworks that we can use during discovery, where we can let the client come to the realization that maybe this is not the right direction.
Design thinking is a framework. So if you always go through the same framework, asking the same questions, so we've got a lot of clients that say, oh, we know our competitors, we know our personas, we know our unique selling points, and we say, that's fine, but let's just go through it again. And when you go through this process, unique selling points is a good one, for example. And so we do a Venn diagram where like know what users want, what you're offering, what your competitors are doing. And so if you're in the middle, it's what your competitors are offering, what you're offering, and what your users want. So most people are in there. If you're in the one on top, what you're offering and what your users want, but no one else is offering, that's your unique selling point. But first, we start to list every feature that they have in mind. Like now, in every business feature that they have that they think can add value to their business. And we say, okay, so let's make the list first, and where does that fit? And most of it fit in number 2, because their competitors are already offering it. So at the end, when you've done that exercise, you realize, okay, so what's your unique selling point? We say, I don't know. Because now, like, through that process, they realize on their own that actually they've got no unique selling points. Now you can start to have a discussion with them. And so that's when you can start to ask more questions and like, help them to figure out where they can focus to stand out from their competitors, for example.
All right. So next one here from Michael. When you're creating an RFP, how much effort and investment can you put in without the client committing? Easy. Zero. You do the work, and then we let you know if we like the RFP. If we don't like it, we tell you to do a discovery.
So I guess the way we also put it forward is that the discovery is the RFP work, the work, like the actual work that should go into doing an RFP is actually the discovery. You should look at the business goals, you should look at the UX, like the desirability for the end customer, you should look at the technical feasibility and opportunities. You should start to to visualize what we're actually trying to achieve. You should do all of those things, and then you will actually have a good RFP, which would be a good starting point.
So basically, the output of our discovery could be the basis of a detailed RFP to then go out and get other vendors to bid on it if you lost trust with us during that process. Not too many have lost trust with us during that process, but in case if you would, it's open. So I think the other thing also is one of the challenges now with an RFP as well is you don't necessarily dictate how to build something, you don't have a choice. The vendor will come with some sort of a solution, and you as potentially a non-technical company, you will kind of accept that as well, right? So I think another option also during the discovery is we have what we call a solution architecture phase, where we then help and really go through it and look at kind of what's available in the market, best of breed solutions to allow you to go quicker to market as well, right? You don't need to build a custom CMS. There is more enough open source CMS, or again, I would say mid-range kind of SaaS platforms out there that is headless that allow you to build on top of, right? The same goes for support platforms like Intercom or Zendesk. You have different chat frameworks, etc. Right? So there is a lot of solutions out there as well, and a lot of the choices you make during discovery will also influence your design and your build, right? So if you are now using an off-the-shelf CMS, giving you all the authoring tools for your team to manage all your content, you don't need to build a custom back office for your marketing team to add all your content, right? So again, decisions like this is very important to be taken during that discovery, which help you on reducing time to market, also getting in potentially better solutions that give you more features for lower cost, and overall building a more future-proof solution by using also more best-of-breed solutions. All right, how long do you take for discovery, and how do you define the scope?
It depends. Yes, it depends. I think for us, it can be, I would say, no shorter than 2 weeks. That would be very small. I'd say average probably a month, up to max 3 months, right? If it's a very, very large project. The objective of discovery, right? We're not going to go in. We're not going to spec everything down to the smallest, most granular requirement, right? That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to, one, create alignment, understand the business. What are you guys trying to do, right? What's the objectives, right? From the design, right? What is this experience? Who are your users? Who are really your users? What are we trying to deliver to those users, right? What is this flow going to be? What is the customer journey, right? We want to understand that. What is the customer journey, right? What are the flows that are needed to deliver on whatever the product needs to be able to do? Technically, right? How do we make this work? How do we bring this to life, right? If we can start to answer those questions, we do it less than 1 month, I would be concerned, right? Simply because maybe we didn't answer all of those questions, and then we introduce risk, we go back to risk, right? But also, we don't want to do this for 5 months, right? Because that doesn't make sense either. Commercially, well, very expensive, right? And then time to market, we've now shot ourselves in the foot. Analysis paralysis, right? So I think we have to find that balance, right? And I think in terms of how we structure the scope of it, it's always going to be, I guess, 3-pronged, now 4-pronged, right? Business, design, engineering. Now we're introducing data as well as a topic. If we can start to have this dialogue early on through discovery, right? Then when we get into, I guess, what we call our second phase of work, a dedicated product team, an agile working team, day one, hey, they know what they're going to be building, right? They know which direction to go. If we just start one day, right, without any of this information, we're lost, right? So discovery, it depends. Big projects may be a bit longer, but at the end of the day, the core is, the scope is business, design, engineering, right? What's desirable, right? What's feasible, and at the end of the day, what's viable.
I think also, if you look at traditional project development, where you have the all fixed price, fixed scope, fixed timeline projects. So what people started doing back in the days is introducing this, like what they call pre-project. So pre-project was, let's write the spec, and then we can commit to that. So it's kind of like, but discovery is not that. Discovery is just finding the purpose and getting the starting point, so we can hit the deck running with the product team, start bringing value as soon as possible, reduce time to market, but it doesn't stop. Like, we will continue to work with stakeholders. We will look at what we are learning, what we are measuring, user feedback, and then we'll continue. So it's discovery is continuing, but the way we treat this here is it's a way to kind of get started. But it's not the traditional pre-project where it's, oh yeah, we need to spend 3 months to spec out this whole entire project, first year of development to hit the first grand release or anything like that. So that's the difference.
All right. I'm not sure how to answer this, but what would you do if the client is a fraud like FTX founder? So luckily we're in a position now to.
I think again, like what we do is we scope everything down. We reduce the risk, right? If you commit to a fixed price project for 2 years, and then it turns out that they can't pay you, and you need to hit like this special milestone to get the first 50% of the payments, it's this very traditional trap for a fixed price project. But if you do discovery, you can kind of validate the client as well. The client can kind of validate you, and then you reduce the risk.
Yeah.
And basically, what we do when we have an agile product team is we get paid per month for the team that we have, which again greatly reduces the risks. And you can see if you're working with a serious client.
Yeah. And I guess the other one is again that we are looking for clients or partners for long term, right? So that means again, it's not only the client choosing us; we also choose them, right? So again, when we look at clients and projects to take on, we do look, of course, into the type of company, the type of tech stack, the type of kind of risk associated with that, and of course trying to select something we think would be successful for both parties. Because if we are working with a client where we don't think the working model will be succeeding, again, it's not great for long-term success, right?
Even if it's actually a very honest client, the fact that when you have a vague RFP, the fact that you don't have necessary alignment on what will be delivered to release that, payment after the first 6 months or something, that is a problem as well.
All right. So when the client comes out to build the app, how business development technical teams talk to each other, and how long does it take to start a project? I think we had that topic today.
It's kind of similar. It's the discovery, right? So basically, for every project that comes in, we will look at the components, so it's the business side, the UX side, and the technical side. So for some projects, we can see it's like very heavy on the technical side because there's a lot of integrations with systems, so we need to invest a lot of time in that. Other projects is like we're building something from scratch. So it's kind of, we are based on our experience, we are kind of sizing the components that we need. And then again, discovery is just the start, so it's not, we don't expect to have whole product like specced out. Or
But
to answer the question.
I think maybe to rephrase the answer, I think one is typically the business dev team now would be pitching to our, I would say, project forum for the project, right? So they make their case, they talk to the clients. Based on that, again, we will scrutinize the project, look at again, is this something that is feasible? Does it make sense? It's something we think we can bring value for the client. And if it makes sense with all of that, plus again, it's a commercial model that makes sense for us, then of course we proceed with the next steps on really validating the project and going more deep into the details. So again, so we have quite a structured way of working with the media and the tech team to validate opportunities and validate them technically before we go too deep into the discussion. How do you twist the point of view of your clients to focus on values to customers? And from that point, what are your approaches to define valuable insights?
Well, convincing customers. I guess, at the end of the day, right, customers are the core, right? Well, users are the core, right? Like Yosan said earlier, we're either building products to generate some form of revenue or we're doing cost savings. I'd say most of the projects fall into that, right? So how do we convince them, right? Well, I guess it starts with asking a lot of questions, right? Can they answer these questions? Do the questions that they answer make sense to them? Because they will get to a point where it's like, oh, okay, I didn't think about that before, right? But I think also, what we want to do is we try to understand what is the customer really looking for, right? And kind of, like for me in business development, right? I always believe in selling the person, right? And not just selling the project, because people need certain things, right? They need to be able to meet an objective. I mean, not just a business objective, but maybe a KPI or a work objective, or there's a team objective, or there's cross-departmental objectives, right? So being able to understand really what are the key drivers of what this person sitting across from you that is going to be your project sponsor, your project owner, right? What is important to them? I think that's one of the big and probably one of the most important steps. Then from there, right, we can then start to see, well, how do we form a discussion around, of course, building the right product for the right users, but then also being able to build the right product that also meets the various objectives across that person that might be buying that project, but also then maybe people within that team or people that have influence along the way. Also good to know kind of what is the actual business, right? Do a little bit of research about who you're selling to. I think it's also really important. What are their goals, right? What are they coming out with? Being able to understand what's important to that organization, what do they stand for. I think that also definitely helps shape a conversation, find common ground, find what kind of works, what you should avoid, things like that. So I think it's, understand who you're selling to, understand what's important to the people that they're trying to sell to or trying to solve problems for, and then the conversation comes pretty naturally.
I think just to add to that, I think one point again is, are you trying now to solve a problem for your end customer, or are you trying to again fix an internal problem and optimize your internal solution, right? So again, it's back to again what Jeremy and the guys said as well, is ask the right questions, try to really understand what is the pain points you're trying to solve, who is experiencing these pain points, and how do we help and solve that for them, right? So again, but through this exercise, these workshops, talking and really understanding what the client wants, we then help and shift that focus to where they need to focus. And if that is now focusing on the end customer because they're doing some sort of a revenue generating offering, then again, we will then start looking into that and then look at again, how do you now measure that success? Is that the number of transactions? Is the average basket size? What are these numbers that we need to measure? And then start incorporating that into the rest of the project and make sure we can measure that. What if my client don't have objectives? Is there a strategy to help them to focus on value first? I think most clients don't have objectives. so it's always a difficult question, right? And I think we are going through, I would say, an educational phase now where we are not trying to teach the client. We are just trying to ask questions and put them into a framework to allow us to understand better. So once again you start discussing, as Gary said, the 5 whys, etc. Once you start asking the right questions, some of this information will surface, even though maybe the client wouldn't be able to articulate that very clearly, directly from a question. I think we might be running out of time soon. So is there any last questions from the room? Anything that anybody really want to know about? More? Yeah. Your company, no blockchain dev? No. All right. Any upvotes here? What are the differences and challenges that come with building a product that is for internal use and never be used for public? So I guess this goes back, into the two areas where we focus. Right, one is revenue generating. The other one is, I would say, cost optimization. So if you look at, I would say, digital transformation, you look at kind of bigger enterprises. A lot of the work we have been doing has been more on internal products, right? And I think just one from my side is, I think, one is the whole change management, right? As in, you need to educate people to use a new tool. A very simple thing that most people can relate to is CRM. Most people have, at one point, been forced to use a CRM, and nobody really enjoys using a CRM, right? Because they don't feel the pain that the CRM is solving for them. It's a pain for the business, but for the sales team, it's not necessarily the same pain, right? So again, it's back to, again, are you solving a real kind of pain point for the user? What is the problem statement and the whole desirability, right? Do you really understand the user, or is this your manager that assume that this is what you need? Or have you actually taken the time to talk to the team, do the user tests, user research, really get to understand what the problems are, and then make sure you build a great product to solve their problems? So I think for me, at least, that's one of the main things, is really understand your users and build a product that really solves their problem, right?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what you're saying. I think it's, why is it different, right? It's product mindset. You should treat your staff or whoever you're building it for, it's in the same way. You still need to think about adoption. You still need to think about retention, growth. How can we learn? How can we iterate? How can we make the product better for the user? It's just that the user is our internal staff, right, or operations or whatever. And I think that's actually really underestimated. It's typically where, again, these kind of RFPs are coming from, where it's just like, oh, this is just a one-off project. We're going to build these dashboards, this and this, and you don't take the time, or you don't put the budget or invest into actually iterating, measuring, learning how to use the interviews and so on, right? So I think, why is it different?
No, exactly. It's the same. It's a digital product being used by either an end customer or internal users, right? So you still need to solve the problem to get adoption, right? There's another one here, is how do you handle when customers couldn't give you information clearly from the beginning, and that information affects the whole project so far? I think that's every project. The problem, again, with most, say, clients, as in, most customers or companies are not technical. Most companies don't have very well-defined product owners that really know exactly 100% what to build, right? So people might be taking interim roles. People might have, again, starting with an RFP, strong wish lists. So again, that's back to, again, we don't want to build what you want. We want to build what you need. And to be able to understand what you need, our approach is to do a discovery to really understand what the problem you're trying to solve. Not to build what you're asking us to do, but to really go back and questioning everything and really understand, right? So even if it's not clear, it's our job to understand what you need, right? All right. What else? Last, Jeremy, for the design thinking workshop you arrange for clients, who are the participants you involve in the workshops?
People that know about the business, or people that know about the users. So before you start any workshop, you should always do a stakeholder mapping, to try to understand who are the decision makers, or who has information about users or about the business. So for example, like the support team, they talk to users every day. Developers, they talk to users. So, well, they don't talk to users, but they get feedback from users. If it's like already like running application, they probably get a lot of feedback about issues on the platform. The marketing team, the sales team, they might know about the users as well. The CEO has a vision about the company. So it's important to get him involved in this, because he's going to be the one that sets vision. But usually we get him to talk last, because that person is going to influence people like not too much. So it's important to try to listen to everybody first. But basically you need about 3 to 5, 7 stakeholders maximum in the workshops. And each can give some additional information that others doesn't have in the company. Like Chris said as well, is very important, because you can create alignment between everybody. So that's something we do very often, because they each have different roles. If you talk to a CTO, like Roy. Maybe his goal is to make the platform scalable and like highly performant. But like for the CEO, his goal is to make money mostly, most of the time, right? So the goals are like very, very different. And so having all these people in the rooms and creating alignment between all of them is a big step into like trying to work together, because once they all align and like having the same goals, the same objectives for the project, they're not going to go in every direction, and it's easier to get all together in the right direction.
All right, perfect. I think I'll answer the last question here now, and then we end it. So many good questions. How do you evaluate requirement time for developing MVP? Or MVP is more about what we can develop in a short period of time, like 2 to 3 months, right? I think just quickly, there's 2 ways of estimating a project, right? Either you do it based on features. So here's a long list of things I want to have. The challenge then is to really understand each of the features, really estimate every single thing, and really come up with a solution, which is quite time-consuming and a lot of round trips to really clarify and really get that done. The other option is, this is the price for a team of 5 people. This team runs for 3 months. This is the cost for 3 months. We now work closely on understanding what's the problem we're trying to solve, in what order, and we try to ship that as quick as possible. Right? So there's 2 different ways of doing it, right? We firmly believe that working closely together as a partner and working on really understanding the problems and boxing it that way is the best approach to really build great digital products. All right. So I want to thank panelists here, and I hope everybody enjoyed this discussion, and we're all going to be hanging out, so please come and talk to us if anybody want to continue the discussion. And I think there's more beer and pizza in the back. So
can I have one final comment?
Okay,
so
let's do it.
I just want to point out one thing, because now we're talking about challenging the client, changing their minds, and all these things, right? It sounds very pretentious. I think the goal of Discovery is to work together. It's to not have this kind of client-vendor relationship. It's to work together as partner, bringing the best to the table from each side. So the client knows the domain, they know the strategic direction, all these things. We are experts in other areas. So again, yeah, so I just wanted to point out, like, this is all about collaborating and working together in the best possible way. It's not about us coming in and dictating this is what you should do, this and that.
Exactly. So we're there to help and challenge you, and then work together and